We're ready to go. Most important attribute being a professor is you have to have a really loud voice. Can you hear me, everybody in the back? Good. Yes? No? All right, let me ask an important question because it's Monday morning. Is everybody awake?
Yep.
Gee, I only heard like 3 yeses. Let's try that again. Is everybody awake?
Yeah.
All right, that's good. All right. Because we are a college of business, we are, of course, going to talk about your favorite subject, which is capitalism and corporations. But also because we are a school and it's Monday morning, we have to have a quiz. Now, before you try to run out the back door, let me assure you, this is going to be a really easy, really fast quiz. So you have to all get the right answer, so I don't get disappointed. It's one question, and it's a true-false question. So what could be easy? Okay? All right. Here's the question. You ready? Don't fail this now. Remember, this is a business college. All right? True or false? This is the statement. Is this true or false? Corporations exist to maximize shareholder profits. If you believe that, stick up your hand. That's like almost everybody. And if you don't believe it, stick up your left hand. 1, 2, 3. All right, 4. See how smart you are. See how smart you are. That's great. That was an easy test. You're all going to do really well. And the answer is false. Okay, see how smart you are? You failed your test. But, if you had asked every business professor in the world that same question, almost all of them would have said, yes, of course. And they would also be wrong. Not only is that statement false, but our belief in the truth of that statement has created enormous problems in the world and done enormous damage. But fortunately, human beings are smart and we're waking up and we're realizing, you know, this is not right. Corporations don't exist for the sole purpose of maximizing shareholder profits. In our discussion today, we're going to come to understand together why that statement's false, what kind of negative and unproductive behavior has been unleashed on the entire world because of that statement being false. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what's being done to fix that problem. Future seminars, we're going to go more in depth with what's being done, legally, politically, commercially, educationally, to fix that problem. But let me assure you, that statement is false. Here is what corporations exist for. Now think about this. Corporations exist for a purpose. We use corporations to do everything. You want to grow food? You create a corporation. You want to produce housing, clothing, entertainment, education? You create a corporation. This university is a corporation. What is the purpose of our university? To provide education. If you're an agricultural enterprise, what is the purpose of your agricultural enterprise? It's to produce and supply food, right? If you successfully fulfill the purpose for which you created the corporation, you will be profitable. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. I create a corporation for a purpose. I succeed at fulfilling my purpose in a really productive, efficient, smart, competitive way, and the result is going to be profit. But if I start with the belief that a corporation exists just to maximize profits, I'm putting the effect in front of the cause. You don't maximize profit and then, oh, by the way, I also fulfilled my purpose. Well, maybe you did, and maybe you didn't. And I'm going to show you a lot of examples about how the pursuit of profit maximization has created the big mess that we're in the capitalist world today, okay? So just remember this, corporations exist for a purpose. If you fulfill the purpose, you will create the effect of profit, okay? If you fulfill the purpose efficiently, productively, right? Then you will have profit, right? Keep the cause and effect. Every business class taught in every business school, everywhere in the world, starts with the assumption that the effect, profit, precedes the cause, purpose. Wrong, okay? Three things. We have to think about them all together. One of the great inventions of human beings is the corporation. And by the way, corporations were invented thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago. There's always been corporations, right? And all corporations, whether it's 2,000 years ago or today, they all have these same three characteristics which makes this concept of a corporation really powerful, right? And really, really useful. A corporation exists separately from its owners, right? It has what we call agency, and it can theoretically live forever. So think about what this means. A corporation can own property in its name, separate from the name of its shareholders. Corporations can buy and sell. They can hire people. They can enter into legal contracts and be recognized as a separate legal entity, separate from the owners. Corporations can sue other people. They can sue other corporations. Corporations can be sued by people. They can be sued by other corporations. So they exist separately from the shareholders. They have this term we call agency. They can do things. They can buy and sell and sue and be sued and hire and fire. And they can theoretically exist forever. Okay? You have a lot of corporations that exist today, but all the original shareholders are dead. Think of Ford Motor Company or General Motors, these automobile companies in America, for example. They're, 125 years old, 110 years old, something like that. Well, I can assure you that none of the original shareholders of Ford Motor Company are still alive today, but the corporation is alive. Now, because the corporation is recognized as a separate entity, it can also be dissolved or executed. In America, we had a 125-year-old accounting firm named Arthur Andersen. And Arthur Andersen was literally taken to court by the United States government, sued for fraud, convicted, and dissolved, which is, dissolving a corporation is sort of like executing a person. And there is no more Arthur Andersen. It's gone. Okay? So this is why corporations are at the heart of all economic activity everywhere in the world, regardless of what kind of a political system you have, right? You have corporations. So corporations and capitalism are not the same thing, right? But if you look at what we call capitalism around the world today, at the very heart of that system of capitalism is the corporation. If we don't have corporations, we literally can't do anything. Okay, we just can't do anything without corporations. And remember, it's a vehicle that we created. We created. Now, is anybody here familiar with the story of Frankenstein?
Yep.
Right? Well, we created the corporation, and then it escaped from our laboratory. Okay, and that Frankenstein can be a monster, or it can be a nice guy, and you're going to see how our current concept of corporations, it's mostly Frankenstein that ran away from the laboratory. And we have to fix that. You have to fix that, and you will fix that, because the kind of corporations that exist today will not exist 10, 20, 30 years down the road. It won't exist because they will be changed, because they are being changed. All right, to make this make sense, let's pretend that we are all investors. Me too, only I'm going to be the chairman and the CEO. Okay, right, sure, yeah, there you go. Right? I wouldn't give up my table because I'm the chairman, I'm the CEO. But we're all investors, right? And we're going to create a corporation, right? That guy. All right, what is the well, to create a corporation, we have to contribute capital. That's where we get the word capitalism. We have to contribute capital to our corporation. Well, somebody tell me what kind of capital we have to put into our corporation. What do we need? We have a corporation, has a name. What else do we need? Money. Who said money? Yes, thank you. Money. Of course we do. That's called financial capital, right? Gotta have financial capital. Except sometimes you don't. Everybody here's heard of WhatsApp? Yeah. All right. I know that. That's an easy question. Yes. WhatsApp was created by two guys with zero money. All they had was the laptops they already owned, and they sat at coffee bars and they wrote the code to create WhatsApp, and then they sold it for $19 billion. They didn't invest $1, except they paid for their coffee, I guess, but they didn't put in any financial capital. But in most of the time, you got to have financial capital. All right, we can all agree on that, right? All right. What about that? What about social capital? Do we need any social capital for our corporation? By the way, our corporation is a commercial enterprise. We're going to produce a product and we're going to sell it, and we're going to be profitable. It's a commercial enterprise. We're not going to save the whales. We're going to produce a product and make money. Do we need social contributions?
Well, should be good.
Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, no? Yes. Anybody want to guess what kind of social contributions we need?
Charity.
No?
Yes.
Yes.
We want people to know about our corporation.
Yes, well, and what he said is we want people to know about us. And we want them to have a good attitude towards us, okay? All right, that is an important part of social capital. All right, think about this. Social capital has two components. One is tangible, all right? We're going to create a manufacturing company. Well, we need highways and bridges and railroads and ports. We need electricity, we need water. Where the hell are we going to get that? We're going to get it from the social sector, right? We need people to know we exist. More importantly, we need people not to hate us. We need people to think, well, that's a good corporation, right? Right? So I want to go to work there. Whoa, go to work there. That means we need schools, right? And maybe we need buses. These are all social assets, social capital. On the intangible side, we need laws. Just try to, you guys are from a lot of countries that some of which I know quite well. You need laws, you need regulations, you need a government that's going to behave according to the laws and the regulations. Okay, you need security. Where do you get all these intangible things? You get them from the social sector. So we need those, or we can't operate our corporation. Can't operate a corporation without the rule of law. Can't operate a corporation if nobody can take a bus or drive their car to come to our factory, right? What about that one? Natural capital, land. What else? Anybody in the back of the room got an idea?
It depends on what product we're gonna produce. If we're gonna produce a product that needs some like natural resources, that.
Yes, absolutely. If we're a steel mill, we need all kinds of minerals. Those are natural resources. But besides things like minerals and timber and the land we're sitting on, we also need water and we need air. Okay? And by the way, we need clean water and we need clean air. Okay? We need an environment that is healthy and safe. It's not toxic. Okay? Nobody's going to build a factory right next door to the Fukushima reactor, right? Because the natural environment is toxic. So we need a clean, healthy, natural environment. We need air, we need water, we need the land, and we're going to be consuming something, usually a non-renewable asset like oil or gas or minerals or timber. We're going to need that, right? What about that? All right, human capital. But we don't just need bodies, right? Right? This is not, some plantation. Okay. We don't just need bodies. We need human capital that is skilled, yes, and educated, yes, but we need human capital that is honest, that is motivated, that's reliable, right? These are important components to human capital. The world is full of smart people. The world, sadly, is not full of smart and ethical people. Right? Right? Every ethical person I've ever met is also smart, but a lot of smart people I know are not very ethical. They're not honest. They're not reliable. Okay? They're not loyal to anything. Okay? Human capital. Last one. I call this produced capital. And again, there's two parts to this. One is the tangible physical part. Right? We need buildings, and we need machinery, and we need equipment, and we need some inventory. Right? Those are physical things. We also need some patents and some copyrights. Right? Brand. We need a brand recognition. Those are things we are going to produce. Our corporation is either going to buy the physical assets, buy or lease the intangible assets. Hopefully, our human capital is going to be very smart and very creative, and they are going to expand our intangible assets. They're going to give us new patents, new trademarks, new copyrights. They're going to create a better image for us. And I mention that because as soon as I start talking about what the human capital is going to do for produced capital, suddenly I'm talking about an integrated, holistic system of capital contributions. 5 of them. Remember those 5, right? Remember those 5 because now I want you to look at something. All right, everybody remember those 5? Yeah. All right, look at this. We have in business financial statements, right? We got a balance sheet. We got an income statement. We got a cash flow statement. And we're clever, so we get them all integrated there with an Excel program. Get them all integrated there. Change one, you change the other. Think about the balance sheet. You guys are business students, so I hope you've seen a balance sheet. And notice over here, I've listed that which we are consuming. And notice I said consume. We consume natural resources. We're consuming air and water. We're consuming minerals and timber. We're consuming human capital. We are literally consuming time from the life of the people who work at our corporation, right? Right? We're consuming their lives through the process of work. We are consuming social capital. We're consuming the output of the schools, the highways, the railroads, the ports, all right? So we're consuming all of that. But here's the important question. Are we recording our consumption? Are we measuring our consumption of those contributions? Are we measuring them? Are we putting them into our financial records? Are we reporting them? Not just to our shareholders, but to the whole world. Well, for those two contributions, the answer is yes. We do. Look at it. We're going to look at a balance sheet here in a couple seconds. We do measure and we do report our consumption of financial capital and produced capital, right? But these other three types of capital, without which we cannot exist. No corporation can exist without contributions of human, natural, and social capital. We cannot do our business, whatever the business is, without consuming those inputs and maybe investing in them so we have them for the future. But here's the problem. It is a really, really serious problem that is killing the world economy. We don't measure that. We don't measure it. We don't record it into our company's financial records. Remember, a company's financial records isn't just some statement you make for the tax authority, right? That's the least important thing a company does, especially if you're Apple and you never pay taxes. Okay, corporations, in order to understand themselves, in order to evolve, in order to be productive, keep vast amounts of records. They measure everything, except they don't measure what's important. You measure it, you put it in your records, and you analyze it, you report it. So here we have this weird situation in the world today where we cannot exist as a corporation without these contributions, without consuming those 5 items. And yet, our accounting system ignores 3 of them. And by the way, it ignores the most important 3 of them. You know, I mean, human beings are more important than buildings and equipment. Okay, the natural environment in which we live or maybe get sick and die is a little bit more important, right, than machinery, and yet we just totally ignore it. Okay, so look at this balance sheet. This is a typical balance sheet. Right? Notice here's the assets, here's the corresponding liabilities, and notice there's a lot of information here. I am not saying that you should stop studying accounting. Okay. A system of accounting measures that which we decide it should measure. We're the ones who decide what goes on a balance sheet, what gets measured, what gets reported. Okay? So this balance sheet is accurate, internally consistent, and it's, I hope, mathematically accurate. But notice how it concentrates on all these financial assets. That might be something physical. But look at this: cash, accounts receivable, prepaid expenses, investment. Here's all this produced capital, buildings, all that stuff. Here's all these liabilities, which are 100% rendered in financial terms. So if you just wake up today and you know absolutely nothing about business, and you look at that balance sheet, you'll say, okay, I understand everything I need to know about a corporation. All we need is financial capital and produced capital. That's all we need, because that's all we're measuring. It's all we're reporting. Okay. The problem is it's incomplete. It is not wrong per se. It's measuring what we tell it to measure, but it's incomplete. And common sense dictates if you take decisions based on incomplete information, you're gonna always take a bad decision, unless you get lucky, okay? You create policies based on incomplete information. You're gonna create a bad policy, unless you get lucky, right? That's common sense. The more information, the better. Incomplete information leads to flawed thinking and flawed decision making, right? You know, we're not going to do that anymore in this world going forward. Those days are over. All right. For those of you who speak English as a second, third, fourth, fifth language, myopic, powerful word. Myopic means a very narrow focus, a very short time frame, and you're focusing on just one variable to the exclusion of all others. So our current corporate system has a myopic focus on financial success. Remember, the financial part is only one of 5 parts to our corporation. And yet we're focused exclusively on it and ignoring everything else, okay? We're focused on financial success, and worse yet, we're focused on short-term financial success. Every TV station in America mindlessly every day says, the stock market went up 300 points today, which of course is utterly meaningless information. But, you know, our media has been trained, like our business students have been trained, to focus myopically on financial success, all right? Now, let's assume we have our corporation. It's all created, right? And we want to follow the idea that we're here to maximize shareholder value, all right? This is where the story starts to get ugly, right? Think of your own countries, think of your own lives, think of all the things you've read about and studied about. We have decided that we are going to set as the goal of our company to maximize shareholder value, right? How do we do that? Well, we have to maximize earnings per share, right? I own 10 shares, you own 2, so I should get 5 times more money than you, right? We have to, since ownership is chopped up into shares, when we say we want to maximize shareholder value, we're saying we want to maximize earnings of the corporation per share of stock. Take your profit, divide by the number of shares. That's how much money each share of stock gets, right? All right, how do we maximize earnings per share? Think of an income statement. We're going to march right up the income statement, right? How do we maximize earnings per share? We maximize net cash flow, right? How do we maximize net cash flow? Well, we can either increase revenue, which is really hard to do. We're in a competitive market. We can't dictate prices. Maybe we have to create a new marketing strategy. Maybe we have to come up with new product or better product. That takes time and money and effort and takes time. But remember, you know, our shareholders, they want to see quarterly profit. They don't want to be told, wait 5 years while we develop new products. So what do? We reduce costs. Because it's always easier to reduce costs than to increase revenue. Every corporation in the world, whether it's owned by the government or it's owned by private shareholders, when they come under pressure, which they do all the time, to increase profits for the shareholders, the first thing, almost the only thing they ever do, is they say, how can we reduce costs? Well, the shareholders can be really sneaky, right? Because remember, corporations exist separately from shareholders, right? Just because I own 2% of a corporation doesn't mean I determine who's the CEO, who's the CFO, all right? So, but I do want to kind of control the behavior of the management to maximize my shareholder profit. So how do I do that? I should have used a better color there. That says tie executive compensation to share price. All the major corporations in the world, all the ones who are doing all the damage in the world, they're doing good things, but they're also doing bad things. Every one of the executives has their compensation, their earnings tied to the share price. Share price goes up, your bonus goes up. In order to help your executives pay less taxes, we will keep your salary at one level, but we'll give you a stock options package. Stock options means that at some point in time, maybe when you retire or maybe when we fire you, you can immediately buy and sell a certain number of shares at a predetermined price. So I say to my chief executives, all right, our stock price today is $10, but I'm going to give you a stock option that lets you buy it at $9 and sell it at whatever the higher price is. Well, what does the management want to do? Do they want to take care of the workers? Do they care about the local community? Do they care about the environment? No, they care about maximizing the share price. They stay myopically focused on financial success because that's where their money is, all right? And this is the system we've created, and it's not working. Here's what that system has created. It's created what I call the pursuit of more for less. Let's make more profits and employ less people, do less good things. What do we care, right? It's the pursuit of more for less. We're going to reduce costs to keep pushing up our profit margin, keep that share price high, keep our compensation high. It's a perfect storm of unproductive behavior, okay? And we did it because that's the way we designed our corporations. It's the way we designed our balance sheets. It's the way we designed our compensation packages. So that's what happens. All right. If you want to reduce cost, what do? Well, you reduce the number of people that you're employing and you reduce their wages. You might say, well, that's not possible in some countries. Oh, sure it is. In the United States, our government and our major corporations and the states controlled by the conservatives have declared open war for the last 30, 40 years on labor unions. Because labor unions protect employment. More importantly, labor unions protect wages. And much, much, much more importantly, labor unions protect benefits. It's the labor union that makes sure that when you retire with black lung disease from working in a coal mine, that you have a medical plan, that you have a retirement plan, that you have some money to live off of. And so what do the corporations do who want to reduce their costs? Well, they change their employment policies. They say, well, we can't do anything about Paul. He's been here too long. He's too old. So he's got a pension plan and a medical plan. But when I hire you, you're not going to get any of that. And I'm going to hire you at a lower wage. I'm going to hire you at a lower wage than Paul. Paul's wage is high because, the union and seniority rules pushed it up and up and up. Okay? So I'm going to hire you at a smaller wage, and I'm going to give you either a smaller pension or maybe no pension. Or, okay, I'm going to give you a medical plan, but you're going to have to pay 50% of the cost of your medical insurance right out of your salary, which means I'm reducing wages. I'm reducing the cost of employment. There's millions of corporations around this world that are doing this right now, okay? Another thing we can do, and this is an accelerating trend, we can expand automation, all right? Foxconn, that produces all Apple products in China, they've been moving their factories to Vietnam and Myanmar because the labor's cheaper than China. And they've been automating. There's been close to 1 million jobs lost in China and Foxconn because of automation. Okay, automation's a great way to go. More algorithms, less people. Now, by the way, let's go back here. You can say, and I hope you are saying, well, come on, Paul, sound like Bernie Sanders. You know, there's nothing unethical and inherently wrong about a corporation reducing its cost. No, there's not. To a point, okay? But there is something very, very wrong in an economic sense, not just an ethical sense, but an economic sense of doing these things. Reducing regulation, reducing the compliance cost of regulation. Well, how do you do that? Well, you're a huge corporation. You're a group of huge corporations. You're all these American oil companies. Well, you make sure your guy gets elected president, your guy gets elected senator, your guy goes to the Congress. You lobby, you've got all the money on the earth, unlike school teachers. You go and you lobby the government to reduce regulation, which reduces your costs. To reduce the compliance cost of regulation. In America, right now, first thing the new government did is they said, we're gonna cancel Obama's requirements for high fuel efficiency standards for cars. We're gonna put them down low. That created billions of dollars of profit for the American automobile industry. But how did they do that? Well, they did that because of their political influence, all right? The holy grail, the holy grail of corporate influence, get your taxes reduced, okay? And I'm gonna show you how this works here in a minute. Get your taxes reduced, all right? The US just passed a $2 trillion tax cut, 99% of which went to the wealthiest corporations and the wealthiest individuals, who are also the biggest shareholders of the wealthiest corporations in America. 99% went to the top 1% of wealthy people and the top 10% of American corporations. All right, that's how corporations use their power. But notice they're using their power this way, not because they're evil, but they're myopically focused on financial success. You got to drive down your costs. You got to drive up your revenue. You got to maximize your earnings per share, maximize the value of your personal share package, or you're going to be fired. So what do they do? All right. Let's look at just one type of corporate business model, the multinational, right? Everybody knows about these guys. Multinational business model works like this. They're playing this game. By the way, does anybody doubt that multinational corporations, I don't care whether it's Apple or some oil company or some manufacturing company, it doesn't matter who they are. This is how they play the game. Because this is the rules of the game we created for them. We said, we as a society have this space, and we say, this is the rules. You can come in here and do all this aberrant behavior, and it's okay, because that's the way we created our capitalism. All right, here's how this works. You source, you produce, and you assemble in low-cost countries. If you're Apple, you produce your phones and your tablets in China, okay? You source, you produce, you assemble in the lowest cost location, okay? And not necessarily all in one place. You might source in various places, produce in various places, assemble in various places, but you're always looking for the lowest cost location. How can you do this? Because finance and technology are globally mobile. Very easy for any big corporation to put the money and put the technology necessary to do this, because it just effortlessly moves around the world. Now, there's very, very, very few impediments to the movement of technology and money. People, yes, because corporations don't like people moving, but they like money moving, and they like technology moving. The second thing you do is you create a sophisticated global supply chain. And you can do this because of technology and because of money. You can do this. This sophisticated global supply chain lets you organize this. And it keeps this very fluid. So if some country begins to demand better wages, or raising its taxes or its environmental standards, we'll tell them to stuff it and we'll just move. Right? We can do that. We have the money, we have the technology. And the third thing is you market products globally. So you sell to absolutely everybody. So if somebody says, well, I'm going to put an import tariff on Apple phones for my country, you say, what do I care? There's 200 countries. Go ahead, knock yourself out, right? So you source, produce, assemble in low-cost locations, you tie it together with a sophisticated supply chain, and you sell your products globally. This makes you enormously wealthy. It also makes you enormously powerful. And this, human beings, we're all flawed individuals. You give us too much wealth and you give us too much power, and we're gonna kind of go off the rails, as we say, right? So the way we've structured our corporate model, the way our corporate model is operating, we have created for ourselves a lot of unproductive behaviors. First of all, we have created, not only globally, but within countries, what we call the race to the bottom. Right now, Amazon announced about a year ago, they're going to establish a second headquarters in America. They're one of the largest corporations and wealthiest in the world now. And they said, we're going to create a second corporation. It was really embarrassing as a proud American to see more than 100 cities just crawl on their bellies trying to get Amazon to pick their city. And what were they doing? They were offering all kinds of tax breaks. You'll never pay property taxes. You'll never pay income taxes. We won't let those labor unions torture you. We'll lower our environmental standards, right? No, because what does a city have to offer? Especially a poor city. There were actually several cities that were so desperate to get Amazon, they offered to give the entire city to Amazon. Just take our city, okay? All right, so, and the corporations have power because they say, look, if you don't match the offer of another city, another state, another country, I'll relocate my manufacturing facilities. General Motors takes a manufacturing facility in Michigan and they move it to Mexico. Because Mexico has lower wages, lower taxes, lower environmental standards, and it's easier to bribe people. Toyota says, I think I'll set up an assembly plant in America. Toyota didn't set up their assembly plant in California because California has, the wages are too high, the environmental regulations are too high, the labor union too strong, the taxes, to their point of view, are too high. They're not, because it's the sixth largest economy in the world, so obviously California is doing a lot right. Where did Toyota go? They went to Tennessee, because in Tennessee there's no labor unions in Tennessee. Wages are low, environmental standards, forget about it. We don't care. Pollute the hell out of this place. Just bring your jobs. It's all about jobs. And this is not good. All right. Economists call this rent-seeking behavior. If you look at any problem in the world, economically, politically, socially, it all comes down to what economists call rent-seeking behaviors. What does that mean? An economic rent is when you earn something by doing nothing, right? Hey, you, back there, in the black shirt. You're experiencing what's called a negative economic rent. it's when you do something and then you get nothing. Okay, seriously, economic rent. It's when you earn something, but you don't actually do anything. All right? If I own a piece of land right in the center of Kiev, right? My father died and I inherited the land. And so I just sit on the land and the value of the land goes up and up and up, and then I sell it and I get a big profit. Well, that's called rent, economic rent. I earned a whole bunch of money and I did nothing. okay? If you lobby the government to lower taxes, that's economic rent. That's rent-seeking behavior. You go to the government, lower my taxes, lower my environmental regulations, lower my labor costs. That's going to give you money for which you didn't do anything. It's called rent. And we have a lot of this rent-seeking behavior going on in the world today. We also have this thing. Because financial capital is globally mobile, and because large corporations can play this race to the bottom game because they're more powerful than many countries, you end up with a situation where corporations are transferring, hiding, and hoarding funds. Again, Apple, I won't pick on Apple, but so I won't. American corporations collectively are sitting on trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of cash. They're not doing anything with it. They're just hoarding it in offshore banking centers. Okay, they're just hoarding it, and they're moving it around to avoid taxation. And some of it's they're actually hiding. They don't want to bring it home to America. They got to pay taxes on it. And again, why are they doing this? Well, because they're myopically focused on financial success. This money, belongs to the shareholders, they say. But if they bring it home, they're going to pay 40% income taxes. Well, that's not how you maximize shareholder profits. So they just sit on it. They don't do anything with it. The world is drowning in financial capital that is just sitting around and doing nothing because of the way we've designed our corporate capitalist model. This is a really big one. Arbitrage investments. Here's arbitrage. If you go to the dictionary, you'll see the definition of arbitrage is when you simultaneously buy and sell something, usually stocks, currencies, securities, or commodities, but you simultaneously buy and sell them to take advantage of a tiny little price difference between two different locations. An American company just recently invested a huge amount of money to lay the world's fastest fiber optic cable to connect the stock markets of New York and Chicago, so that information on those two huge stock markets can move back and forth in just a few milliseconds. Think about that. Just a few thousandths of a second faster than the other cables. They then went to all the largest stock traders in America, investment banks, and stock traders, and sold them for a high price access to the cable, so that these companies could take advantage of information moving faster, so that their supercomputers could do millions and millions and millions of trades every day, just a tiny, tiny bit faster than their competitors, making a tiny little bit of money per stock trade. But when you multiply that by millions or tens of millions of stock trades, you got a lot of money. That is totally unproductive investment. It's total rent-seeking behavior. It's total arbitrage. There's nothing good about that investment. And think of the irony. At a time in the United States when we literally have bridges falling down because we're not making sufficient investment in infrastructure, we have American companies investing in the infrastructure of a cable so that J.P. Morgan, who's the richest investment bank on earth, can turn around and make more money in their arbitrage trade. Think about this. A typical share of stock. Now, this is a mind-blowing statistic. A typical share of stock in America, in a large corporation, changes ownership 7 times a year. On average. Typical share of stock, large company, changes ownership 7 times a year. For what? Arbitrage profit. Nothing more. Arbitrage profit. There's absolutely unproductive investment. Total rent seeking, total arbitrage. But we got other things we might do with our energy and our money, right? Okay. Here's where So you don't get all depressed and become psychology majors. Okay, these are challenges, and not only that, there's a lot of business opportunity here for people. There's a lot of research opportunity. The world is changing. It's not just me who understands this and talks about this. Okay, all over the world you have political, legal, commercial, academic people who see the problem, civil society groups, church groups, right, who see the problem and are working to fix the problem. The problem is not capitalism. The problem is not corporations. The problem is the way we've designed things to operate. The problem is the incentive structure we've created, which is perverse, okay? So what's happening now in the world is a movement to build ethical corporations. There's one thing we like in our university, it's ethics. You know, we're the ethical university. We're also a corporation, right? University's a corporation. We're an ethical university. We're an ethical corporation. And this is what's happening in the world. This is the change. It's going to take time, 10, 20, 30 years. You guys are going to be involved in this. All right. What do we mean by an ethical corporation? Remember I said that a corporation exists for a purpose? And if it productively, efficiently fulfills its purpose, it'll make a profit, all right? We need to take corporate purpose and social purpose and put them together, align them. Why is it that a corporation has to succeed while the environment goes to shit? Why does a corporation have to succeed while human beings lose their jobs and have to jump up from their countries and run away? Why, right? Why does that have to be? It doesn't have to be. It does not have to be. It happens because we've created a system that needs fixing. Okay, doesn't need to be replaced, needs to be fixed. We got to align corporate and social purpose. And we have to measure the performance of corporations relative to the purpose. Stop myopically measuring, well, you guys are going to remember that word, yeah? Stop exclusively measuring the success of a corporation by how much net profit it has, by how much earnings per share it has. We need to start measuring success relative to the purpose of the corporation. Our corporation, Concordia University, we're a not-for-profit. And therefore, we are measured according to our purpose. You know what our purpose is? To create high-quality, educated people. And we are measured relative to that purpose. If our teachers aren't any good, if our classes aren't any good, you guys won't come here. So we have a purpose, and we're measured relative to a purpose, but there's no reason on earth a steel mill can't be measured relative to its purpose. There's no reason that an agribusiness can't be aligned its purpose with social purposes. It could if we insisted upon it, if we changed the laws, the rules, the regulations, the business courses. Okay. We need to, and we are creating a new system of financial reporting. Remember, don't confuse financial reporting with tax accounting, right? Government says this is the tax laws, and you prepare a financial statement to meet the tax laws. Every multinational corporation has to prepare thousands of different tax returns for different states and cities and countries. That's different. There is within the corporation, there's financial reporting. This is what we see. This is what the community sees, okay? And we need to create a new system of financial reporting because our current system, think back to the balance sheet, our current system, it's incomplete and it's inaccurate. If your balance sheet is understating your assets and it's understating your liabilities, that means it's also overstating your profits on your income statement. So the balance sheet is incomplete, but the income statement is dead wrong. No corporation, small, medium, big, government-owned, private-owned, no corporation is anywhere near as profitable as their income statement says they are because they're not measuring all the social costs, the natural environmental costs, the human costs, and not only that, if you're a good corporation today and you invest money into building up natural assets, you get no credit for it. Doesn't show up on your balance sheet. You invest money in human beings, doesn't show up on your balance sheet, doesn't show up in your financial record. Okay? So we're simultaneously in the current system understating assets and liabilities and overstating profit. And I just mentioned this, and I'm going to almost quickly pause. We need to create, and we are, governments and academicians and lots and lots and lots of people all over the world are working on this. We have to create new mechanisms that reward productive activity, okay, over rent-seeking activity or arbitrage activity. We're not going to ban rent-seeking activity, can't be done. We're not going to ban arbitrage activity, it cannot be done. But if we create new mechanisms that reward productive activity, then human capital and financial capital are going to move into more and more and more productive activities and away from rent-seeking and arbitrage activities that are doing the world absolutely no good. Okay? So this is where we're headed. Back to this guy. We have to create a corporate structure, and that means legally, in terms of laws, regulations, all the rules and norms of behavior, okay? You know, all the economic incentives. We have to create a new system of a corporation that empowers and compensates all the different stakeholders, okay? And if we do that, it's going to look like this. It's going to look like the ethical corporation. That's where we're moving. Ethical meaning, look, if I use your property and I benefit from it, I don't compensate you. My behavior is not ethical. That's what we mean by the ethical corporation. If I consume natural resources, I have to compensate nature. If I consume human resources, I gotta compensate humans, not just a wage, right? But a living wage and a real benefits package and a real health and safe working environment, right? So this is what we mean by the ethical corporation. You do something positive, you get rewarded. You consume, fine, you pay. Nothing's free. And we're gonna end with that. Mark Zuckerberg once said something that I really hate. When he founded Facebook, now I want you to think about this. Everybody, Facebook, modern corporation. Zuckerberg's a young guy, smart guy. When he created Facebook, what was his ethical statement for his company? Move fast and break things. What? Damn, that sounds like what Doc Metoff would say. I mean, sorry if you're not from Ukraine. That's not an organizing principle for an ethical corporation. Move fast and break things. That's old. He may not be old, but that model's old. He bought into an old model. The new model says move with purpose. Corporations have purpose. Move with purpose and improve things. And if you improve things, you're also going to be profitable. And your corporation can live forever. All right, that's where we're going to stop. Any questions? If anybody wants to jump up, run away, that's it. Go out and build ethical corporations.